Hello and thank you for downloading the Mandala podcast series. This is Jeff from Mandala Nature, and I'm really happy today to be with Mr. Bob Thurman, who is a great inspiration of mine, most particularly because of this wonderful article he wrote called The Architecture of Enlightenment in a book called Mandala, which is by far the most outstanding, insightful article on what the traditional origins and purposes of Mandala were in the Buddhist tradition. So, I just want to start with that article.
I say, okay.
How long ago was it when you wrote that article?
I don't remember. I don't even remember what I said in the article.
I can refresh your memory. I see. You know. But okay. You started off actually quite nicely explaining how we're all mandalas. Like, I don't know if you remember this, but, so Jeff and Bob here, in the Catskills Mountains, we're a mandala, just the two of us. And then our friends and our families, there's like a kind of a social mandala that extends out from us, and into our geography, so it's just a nice introductory way of explaining the principle of the circle, how we all live as circles. Does that ring a bell at all?
Sort of.
Okay. Well, the other thing is you moved into then explaining quite explicitly the purposes of mandala creation in the Buddhist tradition. And it seemed to be that when these monks engaged in creating mandalas, that they were doing like very specific exercises in terms of moving themselves towards enlightenment. And I remember you speaking about, I think there was the creation phase and perfection phase.
Creation stage.
I'd love to know more about those. About like what were the monks doing? Like what were they doing with mandalas basically?
Sure. Well, I think you have to. How long are we going for? We were like 20 minutes or so, half an hour.
25, whatever. Okay. I don't want to take too much time. So
right. So the thing is that the Buddha, when you become enlightened, apparently, you see the world in a different way than we see it, because you see what it's made of at the same time as you see it as already made. So you see that everything is in a way made of light. It's made of what they call clear light, which is a kind of infinite energy that is beyond the duality of bright and dark, of light and dark. It's therefore clear. It's like translucent, like diamond or something like that. And that is this sort of infinite energy of the void, they call it, clear light of the void. And it is sort of the basic texture, you could say, of reality. So what becoming enlightened means that all of us experience that clear light when we pass out, when we sleep, when we die. And what we never notice that we experience it, because what we experience is becoming unconscious, because we are used to being only awake or aware when we're contacting some object through our senses. We're listening or thinking or seeing or tasting or touching or thinking something, and then we have an inner realm of objects that we think about. So we're used to that. So when there's no content, we sort of pass out. And so therefore we don't notice that in the depths of the darkness, there's this infinite transparency called the clear light of the void. But when you're enlightened, what happens is you reduce, there's a process where you reduce your perceptions of self and other completely, and you realize you become that void, or you realize that you've always been that void of infinite, but that void is not a nothingness, it's not a non-existence, it's an infinite positive energy. But in a way, it doesn't sort of automatically mean that you pop up and do this and that, because you're so blissful in being one with that void and realizing that you're one with every other being in that void, that you don't need to actually manifest anything separate from it, if you follow me.
Sure.
So it's like you are just a vastness of love, and every other being is enfolded in that vastness of love, and you don't feel a need to manifest anything specific. Anything personal, you could say. You don't feel the need to, because your infinite love is with you and in you. But what you notice then, because you expand through that transparency, your awareness, and you notice that other beings are not feeling that way. and they feel freaked out, and they feel they are only what they are inside their skin. And they're afraid of what's outside their skin is going to come and devour them, or take something away from them, or oppress them, or do something to them. So they're like, oh, they're going to have some pain, and they're very freaked out. And you realize that that's based on their misunderstanding of their actual nature. That their actual nature is also a oneness with this infinite loving void, which is, they call it, voidness and compassion. Dongyin Nyingje Nimbojen, reality that has an essence of voidness and compassion. A beautiful phrase in Tibetan. Dongyin Nyingje Nimbojen, or Shunyata Karana Garbam in Sanskrit. So, which is what that's what a Buddha is a being like that. Okay. But then, therefore all the Buddhas are one being, actually, in that sense, in that they are all this one vast field. On the other hand, then, they manifest seemingly individuated embodiments, to interact with other beings who feel that they are isolated and alienated in the world, and are frightened and suffer and have a hard time, as the Buddha himself did before he realized that. All the Buddhas did before they realized that, right? Because they were ignorant beings at some time. They weren't just always Buddhas. So then you have all of that manifestation of, Shakyamuni Buddha in India, some other Buddha somewhere else, Buddhas on other planets, millions of Buddhas in every atom, actually, if we knew how to see the universe, this kind of thing. So there's a tremendous amount of creative manifestation, which only has to do with interacting with beings who don't realize that they're all right to start with, right? And so and because unfortunately, it's must be very frustrating to a fully enlightened being. If a fully enlightened being was sitting with you and me, they would see, Jeff and Bob they're trying to do something and improve things, and they're afraid something's going to go wrong, and they're worried about whatever, and the global warming and this and that. And meanwhile, they're one with an infinity, and they're completely blissful, and they're one with me, and I feel all their feelings. But somehow, because I'm feeling their feelings, I can't erase their feelings, personal feelings, and substitute my feelings for them. I can't do that. Because if they felt like a surge of energy coming from within them, or something, surge of some bliss or energy, they feel like the alien is trying to take birth in them. What's going on? They'd feel their individuality is being violated, and they'd freak out. They'd become more tense. They wouldn't know what was happening to them, because they're afraid of things, you see. So then Buddha has to manifest as if they were a separate person, and then they would come and give Jeff and Bob a lesson about how they're really one with things, and whatever, lead them to that understanding. Because then it's only when you understand, you then open I understand that, then you open your mind to that thing, you see. Yeah. That's what understanding is,
Sure, and...
Okay, so...
Yes, sorry.
So, okay. Well, no, you say. What are you doing?
I just want to, because I'm particularly keen on... I love what you're saying about the pure light, translucent white light.
No, it's not white.
It's not? Okay.
It's transparent.
Translucent.
It's like gray.
Okay.
It's like a crystal.
Okay.
But crystal isn't white unless white shines through it.
I know what you mean.
Red shines through it. It's beyond light and dark.
Okay.
It's deeper than dark. When you go into it in meditation, you come through the white light, then you go through a red light with sunlight, like brilliant, intense, explosive sunlight. Then you go through a dark light, which you think is like unconsciousness.
Okay.
And then you find this clear light, which is kind of a weird combination of light and dark.
Okay.
Like transparent, simply.
Interesting.
Isn't it?
Really?
They say clear light, and people misunderstand clear light to mean a bright white light.
Okay.
But that's on the surface of it.
Stage one almost.
Yeah, that's stage one of going down. If you read my Book of the Dead translation, you'll see. All other places also they tell you, but you see there's 4 lights. There's 4 of them. And they're in the subtle and extremely subtle, which is the moonlight type light, sunlight type light, dark light, midnight dark light type light, and then a light that's so black it's brightly black.
Okay.
And then, but you think you become unconscious in it. And then if you have developed a subtlety of mind where you can kind of be aware, you can be conscious of being unconscious. It's this kind of subtle level of meditative skill you have to develop. Then you can perceive the clear light.
Okay.
So
to use that phrase, a subtle level of meditative skill, right? Were Tibetan monks, when they were making these, I always think it's like...
They were really Indian. Oh, yes, it is.
I'm wondering, do they still do it today? Like, are there people using mandalas today?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. But maybe I hope so. We never know who knows what. You know, we never know unless we become Buddhas.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, this really came from India.
Okay.
Because Tibetans were pretty backward. They were like as wild as the Irish. They were, and violent and fighters, and you know, and they had powerful women like the Irish do.
Sure.
So they were like the Irish people, and they were not into like finding clear light. They were into drinking and fighting and having progeny, and having a good time, and then supposedly and dying and being born and etc.
Sure.
But the Indians were the most sophisticated ancient culture.
Okay.
Because they were the richest Eurasian culture by far.
And what age are we talking about?
4,000 years ago. Well, actually, 100,000 of years, but in the current cycle of history, where we have some recording, 3,000 or 4,000 years.
Okay.
But actually, the human beings are much older than your sort of biologists say.
Sure.
From the Buddhist point of view.
I'm very open to that.
So, and there are also plenty of them on other planets, on plenty of other planets. From the ancient Buddhist time, they say so.
Okay.
But we don't have to worry about that. My point is...
It's very interesting, though. I like that, too.
It is.
It adds color.
In the Buddhist sutras, when Buddha teaches, they show up, they come. They even have parking problems in space. So many beings come from other planets to hear him.
And so they're like light beams, are they?
Well, they have a subtle energy bodies, so they can go through space, They don't need metal spaceships.
Okay.
So my point is, though, let me come back. Let's stick on the mandala, because we can't go on forever. And what I'm trying to say is that, however, so then when the Buddha comes back to try to help us find our oneness with everything and a blissfulness of everything, and therefore overcome our fear and paranoia and hostility and so on, and even dissatisfaction and greed, in order to do that, they have to resort to art, because they have to get us out of our locked-in conviction that the way we see things is the way they are, which is what we have. If I see that tree, that's a hard tree, and that's wood, and whatever. And even when the modern Western physicist tells me it's mostly empty space with atoms zipping around in it, and quarks and things, and heaven knows what it really is. So it's not really a hard tree, like I think. That's a kind of coarse perception.
Sure.
But I don't see it as a bunch of atoms, electrons swirling around a nucleus. You know what I mean? I see it as a tree.
Yes.
So a Buddha sees it as a field, just an uninterrupted part of the texture of the field of bliss, actually.
Okay.
Rather than even just atom nucleuses. Even the nucleus is part of the field of bliss.
Yes.
So in order to do that, he has to generate an ability in us to imagine the world as a completely blissful place. We don't see it as that. We see it as full of sharp edges and dangerous things. So he has to give us the ability, he has to, through art, trigger our mind to, like any poet does, to see a special beauty in something, even in the fang of a tiger, There's something beautiful about the fang of a tiger, even though it's scary because it might eat us, right? It might chomp on us. But still, it has its own beauty, the tiger, right? So then William Blake writes, tiger, tiger, burning bright,
Yes.
And we see something in the tiger. So, like that, the Buddha does. Now, the supreme art of the Buddha, of course, is he creates a most beautiful body that he manifests, a Buddha body. When you see Buddha, you practically faint. It's so beautiful.
Wow.
And even, it's like, I always like to say, the Buddha must have been sort of like Spock or Kirk when they were just beaming out, and they're filled with sparkles,
Yeah.
And their body's about to disappear, and there's like swirling sparkles in their perimeter of their body. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because it's about to dematerialize, right?
Wow.
So a Buddha must look like that.
Yes.
And because the early paintings, there's stories about how painters couldn't paint him. It was just like swirling all the time, so they couldn't paint it.
Okay.
So he went and sat by a pool in a very calm day, and then the reflection in water calmed down the swirling, and they could make out the outline, and then they painted him looking at the reflection in water. They have stories like that.
Okay.
So he must have looked like that.
So they perfected these bodies then?
So first he makes this beautiful body.
Okay.
Then like if you're a teacher and you give a lecture to your students, right?
Yeah.
All they can do is listen to you talk. But nowadays we have classrooms where you can, they go on the internet and you can talk about Tibet and you can show mountains and valleys and rivers, so they can actually see something as you're talking, right?
Yeah.
When you talk about Nagarjuna, it's like, or you talk about Plato and they see a picture of Plato having a drink with Socrates, or Nagarjuna meditating or something, you know, in India. And so, you know, you want to have special effects.
Yes.
To communicate better to your students. And of course, the ideal for a teacher is you create a special classroom. Actually, a friend of mine, I have never been there, but he recently went to a 4D theater at a mall in Bangkok, in Thailand. 4D.
Wow.
Not just 3D, 4D.
Wow.
And then we asked him, like, what was it like? And he said, well, what do they mean by the fourth dimension? And he said, well, when you're watching like Avatar, or he watched a thing called some sci-fi thing with Brad Pitt, I forget what it was.
Okay.
But he said, your seat moves. When the plane is going, the seat starts moving in the theater.
Oh my God.
And then the wind blows. They have fans. When you're in like the wind blowing, you know, the wind will blow. And then he said the most shocking thing was, there was one scene where someone nearly died and was in a coma or something and then revived. And then when she revived, she vomited.
Okay.
And when that happened, he was sprayed from the back of the seat in front. Obviously, it was water and not vomit.
Yeah.
I hope.
I hope too.
But I'm saying, so you have a 4D.
Yeah.
In other words, you completely create a new environment for your student.
Yes.
To illustrate like what you're trying to tell them. I mean, that would be ultimate art form, right? Not, you don't just have a video like one of those modern video artists where they go and sit in a room and there's some video, you know, an installation.
Sure.
But it's the Buddha's installing like a whole environment for people.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm with you.
Now that's what the mandala is. The mandala is an environment which is like a royal coronation palace, complete with defense perimeters, so you don't have to be afraid of any tigers or snakes or horrible things.
Yeah.
Complete with a retinue of offering goddesses and protector fierce male deities and partners and like a discotheque or something filled with people.
Yeah.
But they're all divine, kind of semi-divine.
Okay.
And then, of course, in the creation stage, you learn to visualize your own body as if you had like 6 arms and you're embracing a consort. She had 6 arms, you have 3 faces. And there are many different forms.
Sure.
So you change the model of your nervous system in your brain to feel that you have, like if you had 1,000 arms, if you had a shoulder with hundreds of arms, because your compassionate heart made you want to reach to hundreds of people, then you would have a very different feeling of your chest. You follow me?
I'm with you.
If you had many eyes, because you had many faces, and you're looking in all directions, you'd be aware of many things going on, and they were everywhere around you, all the beings, what they were doing and what they were seeing, etc. So those are kind of very advanced meditative practices, where you're really changing your mind model.
Yes.
Because, you know, when we're an ordinary person, right, you know, if we went to the war and then we were blown up by an IED and then we had our arm amputated, but the brain would still think the arm was there for quite a while.
I know what you mean.
So that means we have a model of our arm in our brain. But then imagine you shift that through meditation. We have a model of having 34 arms.
Yes.
Or 37 arms, 36 arms. That would be a weird feeling, and many shoulder, or the very complicated shoulder joint.
Getting used to as well.
Yeah, and when you had, but the point of that is not just so you can go around being a weird-looking creature. The point of that is, if you had all that, what you'd have is a more open and more complex central nervous system.
Okay.
Which would be sending signals and receiving signals from many more limbs and more senses, more expanded senses. Do you follow me? Yeah.
And that's what the mandala is.
Well, some mandalas. Some you're just a 2-armed, 2-legged, 2-eye, 1-face person.
Okay.
Some of them. So it depends. Those are all, you know, you have a subjective body and you have the objective environment. In a mandala, you have what's called the resident and the residence mandala. You know, the being in it and the place itself, the environment.
I understand.
So, but I'm saying so. But without that, even the ordinary Buddha, you know, when he's like out there walking around like a monk. Well, sometimes people come up to, like, for example, his half brother or cousin was jealous of him and was trying to kill him so he could take charge of the order. Earlier, when he was fighting as a prince, you know, in the tournaments and things before when he was a layman, the same cousin.
Okay.
So at one point, the cousin got a king to be his ally, and they sent a rut elephant, a crazed elephant, to attack the Buddha. This elephant was trampling people around the town. He was like very dangerous.
Okay.
When he saw the Buddha, he just like knelt down and like a purring pussycat, and the Buddha patted him on the head. Oh. Now, how could that happen? You know, what would it be? Well, because the Buddha's field is like a mandala. So when the elephant saw the Buddha, he like saw his mother Buddha, his mother elephant, rather. He saw the Buddha like a big mother elephant.
I'm with you.
And he suddenly felt, oh, there's my mom, and I can calm down now. In other words, the Buddha enfolded him in a different world temporarily. Do you follow me? And there are many such miraculous things that Buddha does, recorded in the sutras, which are something like an artist's special effects, which they get people's attention, let's say, or they get them to calm down or to feel cool. Okay. Do you know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, by special effects, he can't lead them to enlightenment. He can only gain their attention. Okay. And then they have to learn about selflessness and compassion and emptiness and concentration and things like that, so that they can open their own minds. Okay. Do you follow me? Just by doing miracles then they'll just become dependent on the miracle person, so he doesn't do that much.
Sure.
Right?
That makes total sense.
Right,
yeah.
But the whole thing of the Buddhist teaching, the Buddhist movement, is a movement of artists. Okay. Because a teacher ultimately is an artist. Because the student has to imagine they can see more and understand more than they do. Okay. Which a work of art sort of jolts them out of their preconceived idea, and then they see something deeper in whatever they're looking at. And it doesn't have to be a Buddhist or an enlightened person. Any good artist who is going from the heart, they see something that the ordinary person doesn't see. Like, you know, like Emily Dickinson saw the lamps in the streets of heaven in the dewdrops in her garden. So she saw like fairy carriages traveling up and down in the paths of heaven when she just looked at the morning dew in the garden. So she wrote a poem about that. Yeah. And then we go out in the garden and we, like, instead of just rushing off to the office, we see a piece of drop and we remember her poem. And we suddenly see there's something celestial about that drop of dew. Yeah. But we don't stick with it. Whereas in the mandala kind of teaching, the Buddha creates an environment that stimulates our imagination to imagine nirvana. The first way of realizing nirvana is to imagine this could be blissful and perfect as it is. Okay. Even though we can't see it that way. Okay. Right? Oh, fascinating. And once we've imagined that it could be, then we start investigating how it could be. Okay. And we investigate critically how the way we see it as not that is maybe mistaken based on faulty perception, faulty evidence, faulty cultural conditioning by authorities that don't want us to feel blissful because they want us to fight in their army or work in their fields or do something. And so we then begin to work at that. And the more we work at criticizing our own naive misperception, and trying to find the evidence for a deeper perception and develop the mental acuity and stability and concentration to get that more deeper perception, then we're advancing toward nirvana. So it's the art of how to lead us in that way. And then the supreme level of that is only when we have realized that everything is ultimately empty of being substantially what it seems to be. And including the self. When I realize that my Bob identity is not intrinsically real or independently established as a sort of absolute. Because my normal habit is I'm Bob. I forget it. Of course, I'm always Bob. We have this point in the mind where we think it never changed. Right? We see a picture of ourselves 20 years ago in a scene, and we think we're the same person that we were then. And then we get unhappy because we feel like crap now, and we felt better then. But we realize when we look at ourselves, we realize we didn't know we felt better.
Yeah.
So we were wasting the opportunity. You know that, man?
I do know what you mean, yeah.
So I'm just saying, we have this illusion about a solid self that never changes. And similarly, when we see the wall or the window, we think that's really a thing in itself window, right? So to cure that, we do critical, deconstructive analysis of philosophy, and then we develop meditative concentration to combine with that critical analysis of philosophy, and eventually we see through our false solidification of self and object.
Okay, yes.
Of subject and object, right?
I completely understand.
And once we've seen through that, and when we first see through that, we get like we can go nuts a little bit because we wrongly think if it's not solid, it doesn't exist at all. So many people make the mistake of becoming nihilistic when they have that experience.
Okay.
They think that their ultimate reality is nothingness, and they think that emptiness or voidness, Buddha's emptiness or voidness, means nothingness, which it definitely doesn't.
Okay.
But there is a tendency to do that amongst people, which is kind of danger.
Okay, a pitfall, if you like.
Pitfall.
Okay.
But what you realize is even if you have an experience where everything seems like nothing, it isn't nothing because it's your experience of a semblance of nothing.
Sure.
So it isn't nothing.
Yes.
You enter it and you leave it and you're back from it.
Yes. Yes.
So it seemed like nothing, but obviously it wasn't nothing. It was your idea of nothing reified into an object, which seemed to swallow you up for a while. At first you were scared of it, then you thought, what the hell, you jump into it, and then you come out of it, and then you think, now I'm enlightened because I've seen that everything is nothing.
Yes.
That's a very dangerous misunderstanding of a near enlightenment experience. Okay?
Yeah.
But you have to have that experience and understand it ahead, be ready to understand it ahead of time properly.
Sure.
When you do, you can then realize that, well, that is a superficial level still. The deeper level is a transparency where something and nothing are interwoven completely. And luckily, then it's easy to interweave nothing because it isn't there. So it's actually all something.
Yes.
So the transparency becomes the field in which all the somethings are, including the idea of nothing.
Yes.
You follow that?
I'm with you totally.
So only when you've had some degree of that understanding does the mandala thing become overtly taught.
Okay.
In a way, it's covertly taught from the beginning by the Buddha's body, by temples, by pure land vision, by all kind of ways they do it in Buddhist art. But it's only overtly taught. That's why the overt teaching about it is tantric and therefore esoteric. It's not esoteric because people are doing some nasty things that they're hiding from other people. It's esoteric because if people go into this exquisite area, when they have that solidification habit, absolutization habit in their mind, then they're going to have a vision like a mandala, then they're going to be stuck. Then they're going to become like a psycho who thinks everything is a mandala. And they're not going to be able to perceive, they're not going to have the resilience to see the world when it's looking more normal. They won't be able to interact with people. They'll become addicted to some meditative state. And they'll be stuck and they'll become megalomaniac about, I'm a Buddha. And I'm a mandala, and the world doesn't believe me, and so to hell with the world. And then they can't develop their connection to others and their compassion. They get shut up in that, they'll be enclosed in that psychic state. So if you follow me.
Sure, it's like the mandala teaching seems to come at quite an advanced stage then.
That's right.
Somebody's developed.
Well, it's not that advanced in a way. If the preliminary understanding about the nature of relativity, because emptiness means full-scale relativity. The Western science luckily has caught up with it,
Sure.
But not quite. They don't want, because they're scared of that. So they keep, there's this chase for the grand unified theory, chase for the Higgs boson, chase for something they can hold on to that will make their ego absolute sense fit with an absolute object that they can hold on to and have a theory that it captures it. And then they're in control.
I know.
Do you follow me? Instead of, you have to kind of give up to find your transparency. You kind of, you give your life.
Surrender.
You give your death too. You don't have death either, because there's no nothing. So you never die. And once you never die, you realize that once you never die, it's no big bonus. Once you never die, then the question is, how much fun do you have when you're alive? If you're going to be alive forever.
I know.
Then if you're alive as an ignorant person struggling with other people, that's horrible. Right?
Hell realm.
And that's why the materialists, like the Richard Dawkins, the atheists and the materialists, they're so happy with their materialism, and they're so frightened of spiritual perspectives, because they think, I just got to get through till, and then, bang, or like sodium pentothal or Jack Kevorkian or peaceful, quiet death with a lot of morphine. And then I'm just nothing, so I don't have to worry about it. If the whole planet blows up,
who cares?
Who cares? Because it's all nothing ultimately. That becomes a comforting excuse. But I always like to say about them, they have the worst form of blind faith. Because nothing is the one thing you can never verify that it's there. Because it isn't there.
Absolutely.
By definition.
No.
So if you think you're going to enter nothing just by dying, by giving up your body or your sense instruments, you have to be insane. Because nothing is not a place.
I agree.
Right? But they think it is. It's waiting for them.
And because their narrative is kind of like in alignment with our cultural values.
Well, they're creating it. They're the high priests of it.
Exactly.
But anyway, I don't want to get off on that.
Okay,
Because we're talking about mandala.
Exactly. So
let me just say, that, therefore, the beauty of the tantric art, the beauty of the tantric embodiment, the beauty of the architecture, all of that beauty is mobilized to help us discover the ultimate beauty, which is the beauty of reality itself. And once we know that reality itself, that in a way, even ugly things are made of beautiful energy, then we can go around having as much effectiveness as you can possibly have, which is not omnipotence. We reject that any individual being would have omnipotence. That's not sensible. Because if there was any being that had omnipotence and they were nice, we would be not having any problems. Anybody, ever, forever, right?
That's true. I suppose.
There's no excuse if you're omnipotent. So nobody is omnipotent. Buddha is not omnipotent. But Buddha, I like to say, Buddha is omnicompetent. To help us out of our mess of ignorance into our reality. And the reason he's able to do it is that our reality is, or we're already all right in our reality. That's his good news.
I know, we need to just wake up.
We're already all right. It isn't it's going to make some special place for us we're going to go to.
I understand.
We're all right already. But we don't know that. So what we have to do is re-educate ourselves to discover that, and he's the great educator. Or all of them. There's many of them. So now, amongst that education, the most supreme level of it is your mandala that you love so much. And, the powder mandala that the Tibetans refined from the Indians already did color particle mandalas, actually. They already did it. But I think mostly we don't have a description of that little cake decorating tube.
Shakpur,
the Shakpur. We don't have a description of that I've seen yet. Of course, there's thousands of books. I haven't read them all. But they do with their fingers. But even today in India, some people can they pick up some pigment with fingers. They make exquisite and very delicate things. Just with fingers.
Incredible.
Or sometimes with flower petals. Or with grains, colored grains. So they do it with all kinds of things. But I feel, possibly, that the Tibetans used their genius when they learned from the Indians about this, that they refined it to do this cake thing, where they make such an incredible small detail. It's just exquisite. But now what you have to understand is that the great masters of that, what they are doing is they have done a ritual, and a meditative ritual. They had a retreat already for months and weeks before, but I mean maybe 10 years before, some of them.
Okay.
You know, whenever, the older ones. And so they go into this mode of meditation, and they create in their mind a holographic mandala. Oh. So they're in a building, like a building made of light around themselves.
Okay.
They can see that as sort of interfused, like a double exposure.
Okay.
Their imagination and their consciousness is so evolved that they can see that if they're in a museum room, they're making a mandala as a demonstration, or in a temple, they're doing it for an actual ritual.
Okay.
And they can see the temple and the building, and they go to the bathroom in between, all this. But they're really, when they're working, they're really inside this hologram. And the other monks chanting and so forth. It's a group thing, so the group mind is creating this. And then, when they make these lines on the table before they add the pigment, they are meditationally pulling down from the hologram a line. Like when they put those little fringe things on the Kalachakra mandala, where you have a loop of pearls and then 3 things with a yak tail,
yes,
and little bells hanging.
Yes.
That actually hangs from the eaves of the 3-dimensional mandala. It's like, and it goes tinkling in the wind.
Wow.
And it's hanging from the eaves.
Okay.
So when they draw that in the color particle thing, they're imagining that they're pulling down and embedding in this blueprint, which is like a seed blueprint, the seed for the blooming of the holographic vision for the person who is initiated and who will later learn to develop the meditation, and the seed is being implanted in their consciousness.
Okay.
So that someday when they really learned everything a lot, it's very elaborate stuff to learn, and they learn it and they go and they're meditating and they're having 3-month or 3-year or 3-week retreat. From that seed will blossom, from their unconscious, will blossom this building, you see, as a hologram.
Okay.
And they will feel also the seed of their body from the mantra and so forth. This, Kala Chakra body or whatever it is they're doing.
Okay.
Do you follow me?
Yeah.
Isn't that beautiful?
It's unbelievable.
And that's why,
it's amazing.
And that's why they say you shouldn't show this to people who might think it's some weird sorcery. They'll have a negative reaction. Oh. Because they don't know who Buddhists are. They've been taught that they're something weird. They're not good Christians, or they're not good Jews, or they're not good Muslims, or they're not good Hindus, or they're not good Taoists. And so they shouldn't actually see it, because it's such a deep seed to go into their unconscious, even carried into a future life, that if it comes in with a negative, like resistance, like, there's something must be bad, it's infecting me or something. Okay. Subliminally, they wouldn't think that.
Sure.
That's bad for them karmically.
Okay.
So that's why people the Dalai Lama does that, one of the ones that are really big,
yeah, where
people who aren't even Buddhists go, he says, it's a blessing. You have to think of it as a blessing.
Okay.
You don't just think of it, you're not asked to enter it or adopt it or worship it. You're just getting a blessing. Okay. But do have a good attitude about it, that it's something nice.
Yes.
At a minimum, that's the minimum requirement.
Okay, interesting.
Don't come in freaked out and you're spying on what some weird people are doing. Yeah. That's really bad for you.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's good to hear that. But when you said there as well that when the mandala has been created and so when the monks are creating it, they can actually expand the actual mandala out to this kind of 3-dimensional hologram.
Well, no, they don't. Yeah, they feel that before they start creating.
They feel it before.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and
they should be in the mood of being in the mandala when they create it.
Okay, so
technically, I mean, maybe sometimes they're hungover or something. They're jet lagged and they're not thinking. But because after all, like you and I sitting in this room. Yeah. And when we came in, we scanned the room kind of, and we have a feeling from the color of the walls and the moldings and things and the lights.
Yes. Yeah.
About the room, but we don't have aware of every detail in the room. Okay.
Sure.
But then if we were going to do like a model of ourselves we would think, okay, well, it has this color on the wall, you know, we'd pull from the room.
I understand.
To create the atmosphere of the room.
Wow. I love it. And one thing that caught my attention you said there was, you know, just how in our modern culture there seems to be this split, and like some people are kind of fixated with having to know certainties, you know, like Richard Dawkins and the atheists, you know.
Yeah.
They're very they want the search for the Higgs boson, and our scientific mind seems to be fixated on we must know for certain, you know.
But that's okay. I'm sorry, Buddhists would like that.
Would they? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And because Buddha's whole 6-year meditation, you know, and he was such exceptional to start with, but his 6 years of intense meditation had to do with discovering certainty about the nature of reality.
Okay.
And enlightenment, supposedly, and I hope it's true, I can't say for sure since I'm not enlightened, but I've had enough of a taste and enough of a knowledge about it that I think I will be, and I think I know what it is.
Great.
Sort of inferentially, let's say, you know, not experientially, but inferentially. And it is defined as a certain knowledge of the nature of reality, 100%.
Okay.
Absolutely. And the kind of knowledge that is so certain, the ultimately certain knowledge of something, of course, is where there's no subject-object division between you and the thing.
Yes, yeah.
So in a way, it's not the same as, oh, I know that's a window because I have the word window.
Yeah.
And I can say window when I see it.
Yeah, that's a separateness there.
I mean, it isn't a window, it's a fenêtre in French.
Yeah.
To French people.
Yeah.
It's whatever, to a bug, you know, to a microscopic animal, it's some other thing.
Yeah.
To a scientist, it's a bunch of molecules. It's some sand in a transformed state. So that's a subject-object conceptual labeling knowledge.
Okay.
The real certain knowledge is where you experience the reality, so you know it by being it.
Yes, yeah.
You follow me?
I'm with you.
And that's what Buddhism is. So therefore, the scientific quest to know for certain what is real and distinguish it from what is unreal is definitely what the Buddhist quest is.
Is it? Okay.
Only by that knowledge are you free. You cannot be free by faith, free of suffering by faith. You cannot be free by joining Buddhism.
Okay.
You cannot be free by any slogan or sitting in this mandala or meeting that Lama. You can be free when you understand reality.
Okay.
It's the only way. That's why Buddha was forced to primarily be an educator.
Okay.
He wasn't really a prophet. He was an educator. So those people who can't use the education system in ancient time, because in agricultural society, they were illiterate, they had to work in the fields, they produced stuff, there was only a certain number of people who could manage that, and so there were thousands and millions of people who did study and who were educated, but a lot of people weren't, and then to them, they believed that it's a good thing.
Sure.
So you could call it religious for them.
Yes, yeah.
But the others are not believing, they're doubting.
Okay.
Like scientists. The problem with the materialist scientists is not that they want to be certain. It's that they think they're certain when they're not.
Okay.
It's that they have dogmas, and the particular one, which is very understandable, they have the dogma that there's only matter.
Yeah.
And there's no soul. There's no consciousness. Consciousness is just a product of the brain. It's like an illusory state produced by software and the slimeware, I call it, of the brain, right?
Yeah.
That's a dogma.
Yeah.
There's no proof of that. Besides which, with the quantum thing, they don't even know what matter is.
Yes.
They don't even dark matter. They go, this dark matter, 96% of the matter is dark matter. We don't know what it is. I mean, give me a break. They don't even have any idea. And yet they say, it's all matter. But I'm sympathetic that they do it.
Okay.
Because for hundreds of years, they were being burned at the stake by a bunch of lunatics in the church. Right?
Yeah.
So you can't investigate reality. You just have to believe whatever the church says.
Sure.
Earth is flat, this and that, and a bunch of irrational stuff.
Yes, yeah.
So to get rid of that and the fear of the church dooming them to hell and all this, they came up with a brilliant solution. We don't have a soul, so they can't fuck with us.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
Yeah, it was a coping mechanism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now they are a church.
Yes.
And they are burning at the stake any young faculty member who tries to study some psychology, some meditation, some sort of spiritual science. The great Rupert Sheldrake, who does Science Set Free, who talks about morphic resonance and all that. They try to burn them at the stake.
I know.
And so because they become like a inquisition.
Yeah.
And because of dogmas. And that's holding them back in their quest of certainty.
Yes.
Actually.
Yeah.
Pretending to certainty that they don't yet have.
Sure.
Like he has a great thing which I like. I mean, this is off the subject, and I think we more or less finished off the Mandala, didn't we?
We're coming to the end now, so this is fine. And
all right.
I love Rupert, by the way. I got to interview him too for my website. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he's amazing. And I absolutely.
Who did you interview? I'm sorry. Oh, Rupert.
Rupert. Yeah.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, he's fantastic, isn't he?
He's great.
Yeah.
So you see, Mandala. Oh, in Sheldrake terms. What a Mandala does. At the heart of the tantrics in India and Tibet, and a little bit in Japan, and Indonesia, actually, in ancient time, in Bali and so forth, although they got wasted by the Muslims down there since.
Okay.
And in Japan, they're not as full. In China, they were scared about it because of their thing about women.
Okay.
So they had very little in China of this.
Okay.
But in India and Tibet and Mongolia, the institutes for advanced studies of the monastic universities were the tantric institutes.
Okay.
And that's where the people did this mandalas and this teaching of them, although everybody was aware of them, but they really did them as far as internalize them fully.
Okay.
But you see, that created this glory of Indo-Tibetan Mongolian culture, which is the morphic resonance from the minds of these leader, Lama, Guru, Siddhas. I call them psychonauts.
Yes.
The psychonauts. Although I understand Stan Groff used that term independently, so he and I morphically resonated that term.
Okay, cool.
I used to think I invented it.
Okay.
But I heard that he used before he ever heard of my book.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
So that's our morphic resonance. I love Stan Groff.
That's a nice connection, yeah. Yeah, I love Stan.
Psychonaut is perfect, like astronaut, psychonaut.
Yes.
So those psychonauts created mandalas, and they lived in them, and they created this morphic resonance that made this beautiful energy in the hearts of the Tibetan culture and the hearts of the Indian culture thing. But then in India it was trampled by invasions, first the Muslim, Persians and Arabs, and then the British and the French and so forth, the Europeans. But in Tibet and Mongolia it was kept until today,
Okay.
And a little bit in the Shingon school of Japan. But the Shingon people didn't have the more advanced ones. Because the advanced ones had to do with this erotic sexual energy, and that freaked them out in East Asia. They're a little bit scared of that.
Okay.
The ladies freaked them out a little bit, and they keep them in the ladies' pen.
Okay.
Whereas Tibetans and Mongolians, they can't do that with the ladies because the ladies are controlling the yaks, and they're milking the yaks, and without the yaks, they don't have any food. Okay. So they can't boss their ladies. They can't boss their ladies around. And in India, at the end of India. Free India before the Muslim invasion, the women were very powerful.
Were they?
Oh, they were totally powerful.
Okay.
They were the gurus, actually.
Wow.
But anyway, they didn't write that much, but they were the gurus. So what I'm saying is that this morphic resonance from the mandala is really something fantastic.
Yes.
And it really is. And it just radiates out. And so the Dalai Lama, in this 21st century, he has done that. Usually a Dalai Lama does the Kala Chakra initiation once or twice in a lifetime. Oh. He's done 33 times, and he's still doing more.
Okay.
And that creates a subliminal morphic resonance worldwide.
Yes.
That's very, very powerful.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and we really need it at this time.
Yeah.
Because we're at this doomsday or utopia moment,
Make it or break it.
Make it or break it moment on the planet.
Yeah. I know.
Both on the consumerist and the militarist side, because precisely of the power of technology about external reality, not matched by technology about internal reality. Mm-hmm. So you do things like you have nuclear weapons triggers in the hands of an untreated alcoholic like George Bush. which is not sensible.
Yeah, it's not what.
He's a nice guy, but he's like a little crazy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have good self-control. He's not enlightened.
Yes.
And you can't hold the lives of all living beings in your hand in a nuclear football.
It's not wise.
If you're a little bit nutty.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's not sensible.
It's not.
Right?
So
this inner morphic resonance surrounds these people. Maybe when they're getting mad and they're about to push some buttons, and then they suddenly feel better, and they go out to a disco instead.
Yeah, and say
take a drink, eating a tranquilizer or something.
On the morphic field idea, and we can close on this, but do you think that, when those enlightened beings would have created these mandalas, like it presumably would have been...
Psychonauts. Buddha's, of course, the original psychonaut, yeah.
And Rupert Sheldrake, when he talks about morphic fields, it kind of transcends time.
Yeah.
So when we then sit down to create a mandala, we're kind of coming into alignment with all those others before us.
Of course.
Who have engaged in that art form.
Of course.
So do you think it's like a way we can
maybe we're coming into alignment with our own previous lives where we made mandalas.
Yeah.
Could be, some of us.
I've thought of that, but could be.
Could be. That's why it freaks us out.
Yeah.
Could be.
The mandala in Mandala is beautiful. The sand.
Yeah, I know. Somebody messed it up, though. We have to fix it.
Yeah, I saw it kind of. You have to put a little protective cover on it, but it's still beautiful.
We did have one, and then I keep telling people to put it back, and then I get busy and run off.
It's so gorgeous. When was that done, that one, in Mandala?
Are you going back to Mandala tonight, or are you leaving?
I am. I'm going back tonight, yeah.
Can you get some saran wrap?
It's around already. Saran wrap.
Completely again?
Yeah, completely.
Oh, good. Thank God.
So you can, no fingers.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, no, it was well done.
I'm glad. I thought you were saying it wasn't protected.
No, it is, yeah.
Thank you.
But that's a masterpiece.
Yeah, they let us keep it because of we need the morphic resonancy. See, let me just say last thing, the mandala of the medicine Buddha, which that one is at Mandala. Mandala means medicine Buddha, you know that. Mandala is Tibetan for medicine Buddha.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, Vaishya Guru in Sanskrit.
Okay.
But medicine Buddha. Yeah.
Okay.
And it means that. And so when you're a doctor in the Tibetan medical training, and we should train every Western doctor like that, and they could use Asclepius if they want, Hippocrates, doesn't matter, if they don't like medicine Buddha.
Sure.
But the point is, they'll learn to create that holographic field around them of medicine Buddha's mandala palace. Okay? And therefore, when the patient walks in, they just talk to them like, here, let me look at your pulse, and are you pissing blood, and do you have a pain in your kidneys, whatever. They don't act like, I'm being medicine Buddha, but they're surrounding them in a morphic field of medicine Buddha. And medicine Buddha's morphic field is that those beings' cells, molecules, are clear light bliss energy molecules.
Yeah.
And so it's like the ultimate placebo effect meditation.
Yeah.
And so they don't burn out, so they can be really sensitive to what's wrong with the patient, but they can surround the patient with the potential of blissful healing.
Yeah, so just be...
But any doctor who says, now you're a medicine Buddha field and I didn't, that's wrong. They shouldn't say that.
Yes.
But the point is they're meditating that. You follow me?
I'm absolutely...
So you're doing morphic field generation practice when you're a doctor. Yes, Phil, how are you?